Mr. President.
Senator from Georgia.
Mr. President, I rise today to discuss Senate Amendment number 3907, offered by Senators Dodd and Feingold to the Intelligence Committee's FISA legislation. I want to compliment my friend from Alabama for some very strong, very pointed remarks on this issue as well as the other issues that he addressed. I'm pleased that the leaders of the Intelligence Committee were able to come up with an agreement on how to proceed on this important legislation. I look forward to the debate on many of these amendments. A couple of the amendments have been offered relating to Title II of the bill, which provides immunity to those telecommunication carriers who currently face lawsuits for their alleged assistance to the government after September 11 and their participation in what's known as the Terrorist Surveillance Program, or TSP. Senators Dodd and Feingold have offered an amendment striking this section. Senator Specter and Whitehouse have offered an amendment which would substitute the government as a defendant for the telecommunication providers currently being sued for their alleged support to the President's TSP program. I do not support either of these amendments. As a member of the Select Committee on Intelligence, I had access to classified documents, intelligence, and legal memorandum, and heard testimony related to the President's TSP program. After careful review, as stated in the committee report accompanying this legislation, the committee determined, and I quote, that electronic communication service providers acted in good faith belief that the President's program and their assistance was lawful, and I close quote. The committee reviewed the correspondence sent to the electronic communication service providers, stating that the activities requested were authorized by the President and determined by the Attorney General to be lawful, with the exception of one letter covering a period of less than 60 days in which the counsel to the President certified the program's lawfulness. The committee concluded that granting liability relief to the telecommunications providers was not only warranted, but required to maintain the regular assistance our intelligence and law enforcement professionals seek from them. Although I believe that the President's program was lawful and necessary, this bill makes no such determination. This is not a review or commentary on the President's program. Rather, it is a statement about how important this assistance by the electronic communication providers is to our government. I cannot understate the importance of this assistance, not only for intelligence purposes, but for law enforcement purposes also. The Director of National Intelligence and the Attorney General stated, extending liability protection to such companies is imperative. Failure to do so could limit future cooperation by such companies and put critical intelligence operations at risk. Moreover, litigation against companies believed to have assisted the government risks the disclosure of highly classified information regarding extremely sensitive intelligence sources and methods. There is, Mr. President, too much at stake for us to strike Title II, and substitution is not an acceptable alternative. This week, we have been alternating between legislation geared to helping our taxpayers and FISA. Yet substituting the government in these lawsuits will force the American taxpayer to front the heavy legal bills associated with this legislation. Substitution would allow these trials to continue and could risk the exposure of classified sources and methods through the discovery process in the litigation. As a defendant in these frivolous lawsuits, the government may be required to expose some of our most sensitive intelligence sources and methods. Let me emphasize that the committee already found that these communication providers acted in good faith under assertions from the highest levels of our government that the program was lawful. If an individual alleges he or she has a claim due to this program, that claim can be brought against the government and should not be brought against the providers. The Intelligence Committee bill left open the option for Americans to sue the government. An aggrieved individual may sue the government and attempt to prove standing and a cause of action. However, substituting the government does not shield our American business partners from these cases, nor does it relieve them of the liability to their stockholders they may unjustly face and which may be borne out in our economy. Substitution only increases the risk of leaks, and these potential revelations only make our enemies better informed on the tools we have to conduct electronic surveillance. Mr. President, some of my colleagues have complained about access to the documents regarding the President's program. And it is true that many members of Congress have not had access, nor have they had an opportunity to review these documents. There's a good reason for that. These documents are highly classified and represent details about intelligence sources and methods. I worry that expanding the number of people who have access to these documents will increase the likelihood that intelligence will get leaked into the public. It is more appropriate that the Oversight Committee review and report back to the Senate on the various intelligence activities of the United States. That is why the Senate has an Intelligence Committee. As a member, I'm familiar with handling classified material and receiving classified briefings. I have made commitments to safeguard the information that I learned behind closed doors within the Intelligence Committee. Given the wide array of information I have heard on the Intelligence Committee, I question the benefits a member would gain from such a limited yet specific review of the operations of our intelligence community. Rather, I urge my colleagues to support the determination of the Intelligence Committee, which is charged with regularly reviewing the intelligence activities of the United States, and oppose the amendments offered by Senator Dodd and Senator Feingold. Providing our telecommunications carriers with liability relief is the necessary and responsible action for Congress to take. The government often needs assistance from the private sector in order to protect our national security, and in return, they should be able to rely on the government's assurances that the assistance they provide is lawful and necessary for our national security. As a result of this assistance, America's telecommunications carriers should not be subjected to costly legal battles. With that, Mr. President, I would yield the floor, and I would suggest the absence of a quorum.
Clerk will call.